everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about 2011's Hugo and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Arrow Video. So Hugo was originally released in 2011, directed by the legendary Martin Scorsese, based on the 2007 book, The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick, and this movie stars Asa Butterfield as Hugo, a kid living in a Paris train station. He's an orphan. His father, played by Jude Law in this movie, passed away, and he's sent to live with his uncle, who lives at this train station as well, taking care of the clocks. But he happens to be a drunk, and then he just up and disappears, and now Hugo has to take care of the clocks all by himself because that's what his family does. They're basically clock repairmen, and that's where him and his father bonded over. It was bonding over, fixing clocks, and they actually were fixing this machine back in the 1930s, or from the early 1900s to the 1930s, called a automaton, which is like a wind-up toy in a sense, but a little bit more detailed. Like the one that in this movie that Jude Law and him are trying to fix up can actually write things down, and they're trying to figure that out, but he passes away and he's not able to finish it. But then he is able to finish it on its own, and it has some sort of connection to Ben Kingsley's character in this movie, who plays two people. One who we think is Papa Georgios, who is the godfather of Chloe Grace Moretz character. And it turns out he is also famed film director Georges Méliès, who was a big-time director back in the early 1900s, a guy who had a fascination with film. In the early 1900s, all moving pictures were basically considered something you would go to the carnival to see, something that was supposedly supposed to be just a fad.
Mark my words, Charlie. Those things will never catch on.
This guy got a love for it. He loved making movies, and he ends up making one of the most famous films ever. I'm sure an image that you guys have all seen, the movie A Trip to the Moon, which features the rocket going into the eye of the moon and the moon just reacting, like, making that face that it makes. One of the most famous images, and he plays that character in this movie. So him and Hugo have this connection that they don't even realize, but really what this movie is about is cinema in general and the power of movies, the power of escaping, and movies being that escapism, getting away from your regular life for a couple hours and just having your dreams come true and watching movies. And Martin Scorsese, a huge cinephile, loves movies. I totally understand why he would make a movie like this, paying homage to one of the great filmmakers of all time and having his characters be in love with movies. You could just see Martin Scorsese's love for film on screen in here, and it really got to me. It's very similar actually to the movie from 1988 called Cinema Paradiso. When I was watching this, that's the movie that kept popping in my head, was Cinema Paradiso. And even though this movie isn't animated, it has such a beautiful flair to it, a beautiful look to it. It actually kind of reminded me of what Robert Zemeckis was doing with like the Polar Express at the time, except it's not animated, just the backgrounds are green screen. Everything else is live action. It's just got this very unique look to it. Everything just kind of looks artificial, but it works. It doesn't take you out of it like a lot of movies, especially a lot of movies nowadays with CGI world, because they are real sets just with CGI backgrounds. It doesn't take you out of it like a more modern movie would, and I really did appreciate about that. It's not a flawless movie though. It does have some pacing issues, especially in the first two acts, but then once we get into the third act and we get all the reveals, I think the movie works 10 times better, and it actually builds up to a couple great scenes, mainly because Ben Kingsley is such a great actor and one of the best actors to ever live. His character is the one that I had the most attachment to, and he has a great monologue in the third act that actually had tears running down my face. That's how good it was. But everything leading up to that could be a little bit hit or miss. There's points in this movie. This movie's about 2 hours and 6 minutes long. I feel like you probably could have shaved about 20 minutes off in there and had a perfect film. But the pacing issues in the first two acts do kind of take me out of it. We have kind of very quiet moments where I feel like Martin Scorsese was trying to pay homage to silent films in these moments. We just have no dialogue for pretty good stretches of the movie, and I feel like it actually hurts the movie than actually helps the movie. So those are the moments that really kind of took me out of it. But for the most part, this is a great film. And again, just building up to a great third act and a great conclusion really does make it all worthwhile. The way it looks is fantastic. Everybody does a great job acting in this movie, mainly Sacha Baron Cohen and Ben Kingsley. Sacha Baron Cohen, at the time, he was trying to actually do a little bit more acting other than the movies that we would know him for, like Bruno and Borat. He's kind of playing an over-the-top character. He plays this inspector at the train station here, and he's kind of a dick, but he has a heart to him. You realize that there's a reason why he acts like this. He has a problem with his leg. It got hurt in the war, so he's very defensive about that, so he kind of pushes people away, but he's trying to learn to be a little bit warmer, and that his arc is actually pretty good in this movie. And Sacha Baron Cohen, he does a great job in this movie. I think he's actually perfectly cast for this role as somebody who plays like this dick who's trying to learn his lesson, trying to become a better person, and I think he does a good job in that. Chloe Grace Moretz was kind of on top of the world at the time. This is just after Kick-Ass, and she turns out a very different performance than Hit Girl and Kick-Ass. She actually turns out a very heartwarming, a very caring performance in this movie. You really do care about her and Hugo's friendship and how they take care of each other. At first, she's just such a caring individual. It kind of takes you off guard, especially how everybody else is in this movie. Everybody that Hugo had interacted with before she shows up was kind of very cold towards him, but she was very understanding and very warm from the very beginning, and she carries that throughout the entire movie. And then another character who doesn't show up until about halfway through the movie, played by Michael Stuhlbarg, is great. That's another actor who just doesn't get the credit he deserves. Many people might remember him from Men in Black 3, but he was really good in Call Me By Your Name. And then what I think is his best performance ever, A Simple Man by the Coen brothers. That is by far his best performance that he's ever done. But he does turn out a great performance in this movie. There's just something about him. He's very magnetic. You get really drawn to him, and the way he delivers his lines is just great. He does a great job in this movie. I really can't say too many bad things about Michael Stuhlbarg, and I never will, because he does just such good work. I just wish that more people appreciated him for what he is, which is a fantastic actor. And the score to this movie really does help to move it along great. It really does feel like a 1930s French score, exactly what you would imagine it would be, but it really does help this movie move this movie along. But again, the thing that really stands out are the visuals in this film. Every shot, there's like those little particles of dust in the light that you could see, when it's snowing outside and it's just filling up the air. It just looked gorgeous. I can totally see why Arrow Video chose this movie to go to 4K, because it absolutely is worth it. It's one of those movies that are just visually stunning. I can't believe it took me this long to see it. I feel like I missed out because it's that good of a movie. It's one of those movies I really think is going to tug at your heartstrings, but just, you might feel the pacing a little bit more in the first 2 acts of the film, but I promise you, it really does build up to a good conclusion. So if you hang in there and you don't feel like you're into it, I promise you by the time you get to the 3rd act, you'll be loving this movie and you'll feel very rewarded at the very end of it. So now we're going to dive into the 4K Blu-ray portion of this review. But before we do that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, lists, podcasts, and shorts, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing would help this channel out more than by just simply liking this video and subscribing to the channel.
And so the great adventure began.
So, here we have the Hugo 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Arrow, and it was in association with Paramount Pictures. Actually, fun fact for you, this is the last film to use the old Paramount Pictures logo that they ended with in 2011 when they wanted to celebrate their 100th anniversary logo. Probably the one you guys have all seen now, but I just thought that was a little bit cool that this is the last film to do that. Anyway, we get a really nice slipcover on here. They didn't break out the fine china, Arrow Video's hard cases that they put out like last month with Waterworld. No, this one's just a regular old slipcover, and it's not really the best paper slipcover either. I actually have some damage on the bottom just from shipping, so nothing too great there, but you get different artwork underneath, which is really cool. And then the artwork is also reversible, so whichever way you want to go. And I'm actually going to go with the new artwork because it is different than the slipcover, so I thought that was pretty cool. But you have your options, and I love that they gave us the options. You go inside, you get a nice booklet here, nice couple little essays, some pictures, really cool. And you also get a 2-sided poster for all the poster fans out there, so you get a lot of good stuff there. You get one 4K Blu-ray disc. You flip it over, you get one Blu-ray disc, and that Blu-ray disc is in 2D and 3D. When you go to hit play, it'll give you the option if you want to watch it in 2D or 3D. So for all the people out there with 3D TVs, you know what? You get a new 3D Blu-ray. That's kind of rare nowadays, but back in 2011, everybody was going for 3D. After Avatar took off at the very end of 2009, everybody was using 3D technology. Hugo didn't escape that, but I'm not able to test out the 3D, but from what I understand, it's actually pretty good. And if you're a fan of 3D movies, you're definitely going to want to check this out, especially since we don't get too many new 3D Blu-rays anymore. A few a year, and that's really it. And then you get a special features Blu-ray over there, so all your special features, except for a commentary track, are going to be on that 3rd disc. But on the 4K and the Blu-ray, you do have your same choice of audio and on that audio commentary track, and the audio options are very simple. Actually, it's a DTS HD 7.1, or you can have a 2.0 mono track, so it's really going to come down to your choice on that. I actually don't really have too much experience with a DTS HD 7.1. I've used some Dolby 7.1s, but I don't have too much experience with a DTS 7.1, so I thought that was pretty cool that was on this disc, and you can get it on the Blu-ray disc as well. So you get the same commentary tracks. You do have one choice of subtitles, so not many choices choices as far as that goes when it comes to accessibility, but just wanted to point that out. And the visuals on the 4K disc are going to have HDR10 and Dolby Vision. I tested them both out. They're very, very, very comparable. And the Blu-ray disc is going to be a 1080p compressed version of this new 4K scan. So it's the same exact thing, except on the 4K disc, you're going to obviously have Dolby Vision and HDR10. And that stuff is just going to make the 4K in general brighter. It's going to make the colors pop a little bit more because the Blu-ray itself is pretty good. I actually don't really have too many complaints about the Blu-ray. My complaints about the Blu-ray and the 4K are pretty similar, actually. On the 4K, there's certain scenes, especially towards the third act, where Ben Kingsley's skin tone kind of looks a little bit off. I mean, I actually watched the 4K first, and then I went and checked the Blu-ray, and it's pretty much the same issue. It's just the skin tones look a little bit off, and I think it might have something just to do with the green screen. And it's a very, very minor complaint. It's probably still something that carried over from the previous film. It just feels like the lighting a little bit off in this sequence towards the end. It just kind of threw me off a little bit, but for the most part, everything is crisp, clear, and clean. There are some scenes where it might look a little bit faded, and that might be a choice because, again, that's something that's an issue on the 4K and on the Blu-ray, but it's very, very minor complaints. You might not even notice that those issues are there because, again, it's a visual showpiece. This is absolutely the kind of movie that deserved to get brought to 4K just because it's a visually stunning film. Like I said, with the snow coming down, the dust particles in the room, the 4K is just going to enhance that. It's going to enhance the light, the background lighting in a lot of scenes, like when we have the scenes with Jude Law talking to his son Hugo and the light in the background, and in the 4K it's just going to be slightly brighter, and it's not going to overwhelm the scene, so the blacks are still deep and dark, and that stuff is just gorgeous. On the Blu-ray, it might look a little bit muddier, but again, not too much muddier. If you just happen to have the Blu-ray for some reason and you're just watching the Blu-ray, you're not going to see a huge difference in the 4K and the Blu-ray, in my opinion. They're very, very, very comparable. Again, I'm not able to test out the 3D, so I don't know how that works. But if you're wondering, if you're wondering about the 3D, it's nothing like, Friday the 13th Part 3 3D or Jaws 3D. It's like there's only like one sequence when you're watching it in 2D where you go, okay, I see that was put in there for 3D. But for the most part, the 3D is probably just there to help enhance the film and just make it look a little bit, better. Especially if you guys remember what 3D was like in the early 2000s. It wasn't bad. It's just that everybody was doing it. I actually am somebody who hasn't seen too many films in 3D just because I don't have the greatest of eyes, and it kind of gives me a headache, but I've always felt like the Avatar films did it the best. But I would have loved to see this on 3D. I'm sure it does look like it's something that would actually be enhanced with 3D, so it's pretty cool that you do get that option here. Not many films do give you the option. And then as far as the extras go on that third disc, all of it is fantastic. You get a lot of interviews. You don't get like a making of documentary, which I was actually pretty surprised about. It's really just a bunch of interviews, a bunch of featurettes, and there really is a lot of them. And I'm just going to point out my favorite featurette on here. It's something that's actually not new, but it's an interview with Sacha Baron Cohen where he's in character essentially, but it's his character in the movie talking about like Martin Scorsese and the other actors, and he's just insulting me. He's like, I should have directed this movie, not Martin Scorsese. I'm telling him all the time, I know he's some kind of big shot director, but he's doing a terrible job. I just thought that's absolutely hysterical, leading right into Sacha Baron Cohen, the person, the guy who just done Bruno and Borat. He absolutely knows spoof and satire, so I thought that interview was fantastic. I was just sitting there laughing at that, so definitely check that one out if you guys want. And then all the other extras are great. There's plenty of new interviews for this, which we don't really get too many studios doing new interviews or new extras. A lot of studios just like to recycle their previous extras that they put out even way back on DVD. So getting new 2023 interviews is awesome. I really do appreciate that. So there's plenty in here for fans of this movie. And again, the packaging is great. The audio is great. The visuals are just stunning. So there's really not too much to complain about other than, some minor issues with the packaging. I would have liked a better slipcover, but, we're really just talking about minor complaints here. The movie itself is really, really enjoyable. It's definitely one I think you should check out, even if you don't grab this on 4K and you just want to watch the movie. It's definitely something in Martin Scorsese's catalog. Might not be as comparable to movies like Goodfellas, Casino, Wolf of Wall Street's Raging Bull. It might not be like a top 5, top 10 Martin Scorsese film, but it's still a Martin Scorsese film, so it's still better than most movies that you're going to see, and it's definitely one you should check out. If I was going to give this whole 4K experience a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Definitely grab this if you can, but if not, again, definitely just check out the movie Hugo. And if you guys enjoyed this review and you want to continue to support this channel, nothing helps this channel out more than just by you simply liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and then just going out in those streets. Maybe head over to your local train station and tell all your friends about us. We'll be seeing you around.